what we want to do first is I'm going to go over the soil, okay? I want to get the soil ready prior to planting the tomatoes. And please, raise your hand if you have a question, interrupt me, try to stay on topic because I tend to go off to la-la land and rabbit holes and stuff very easily. So you're going to bring me back if I kind of deceive you.
What's the magic word?
I don't know. What's the safe word? Anyhow, prepping your soil. All right, how many people have raised beds? How many people have just ground? How many people want to do this in pots? Okay, a little bit of everything. This is good. What's the difference between raised beds and in the ground? Anybody tell me?
Drainage.
Well, first of all, the soil seems to be softer and it's easier to weed out. And it doesn't hurt your back so much.
You know, you almost hit it on all areas. Number one, drainage. That's absolutely true. Nothing better and more important than good drainage. Number two, the soil quality. It's soft, but if you've got a really bad clay soil or even a super sandy soil, you make these raised beds and you're getting an ideal soil with that. Aesthetics, they look really good. Also back, you know, as we get older, it's a little harder to bend down. I have a brother-in-law who's got MS, and we built his beds up like this, so in his wheelchair he can go in and out of those. So accessibility is really important too. As far as getting different products and end results on, there's really no difference. If you prep your soil really good, you're going to get the same as you would a raised bed as what you with in the ground. Okay, knowing that. But if you have an extremely, and I'm going to go always to clay, if you have an extremely bad clay soil, it's really hard to prep that soil and keep it prepped. So you could prep it till you're blue in the face, and then all of a sudden a year later, that clay will come back. All that organic matter decomposes, and you got your clay soil back. Now, if you do have a clay soil and you're building your bed, what I suggest is preparing the soil under the bed and making sure that that is really good for drainage. Then you get your raised bed, and then you build it up. And the easiest way to do that is just fill it up with the raised bed mix here. That's the hot setup. Prior to planting, mix a little bit of Harvest Supreme in. You've got the best soil you can imagine. Okay? So you want to prep below the raised bed, and then you want to fill it with the different types of soil. Now somebody might ask, well, what if there's no soil underneath? Okay, if you have just concrete. You got to be careful of a couple things there. Number one, you want your raised bed to be at least 2 feet deep. Okay? A tomato plant needs 2 feet by 2 feet by 2 feet. One plant. All right? And the other thing you got to be careful of is if you're on cement is the heat and the reflection. So you build your beds, prep your soil, and then what I like to recommend is putting maybe an inch of compost or mulch, wood chips or something all around the bed to so you don't have the heat. Okay. Yes,
same thing with pots then? If it's on concrete, if your pots that you're growing your tomato is on concrete?
It's a good idea because the reflection from the concrete, it can heat it up a lot more, and if that cools it down, but more for the raised bed, you could possibly too. So anyhow, going back to the raised beds and the ground, they're basically the same if you prep your soils properly. I like to plant my tomatoes in 45-gallon containers. And just to give you an idea, these are 15 gallons here. Okay? Everybody says, oh, you can plant a tomato plant in a 15-gallon. You can, but you're not going to get a lot of product out of it. Okay? A tomato plant, again, 2 feet down and 2 feet across. They need 2 by 2 because of the root system. All right? So the 45-gallon containers are that big. All right? So we get our 45-gallon containers, and if you follow me on my social media, you'll see we're just getting ready to plant. We filled them in there. I have cards here for you guys to follow that. We've taken pictures. I also have a YouTube channel. So I have Ask Mr. List is my YouTube channel. Last year I had 10 videos what we did last year. I've got 2 already up this year. And I'll put another one up at the end of the week when we start planting. So you get your tubs, and what I like to do is we use this thing we call the Steve Godo lasagna method. And we put down a layer. We do a lot of composting at school too. So I put a layer of compost, a layer of dry organic, okay? And how do I know this is organic? That's good, very good. Yes, but what if you don't know that all Kellogg's products are 100% organic?
This probably has some kind of coat on it.
It is, it does have a coat. This little thing here, it says OMRI, okay? If you want to be 100% sure that it's organic, you need to see this. That means Organic Material Research Institute. And I like to lecture and I like to teach 100% organic. Yes? Okay.
One from the public and another one on Orange County. What they were calling each one guaranteed
Okay, well, I don't know what they have down here. I'm very familiar with the city of LA and their free composting and amendment programs. Number one, a mulch is just a top dress, okay?
What?
A top dress. And you got to be careful with that. You don't want to mix that into the soil. All that is chopped up wood. If you mix that in the soil, you're going to do the opposite of what a soil amendment would do. It'll take out the nutrients. So a mulch is just for the top. Huh?
I say that eventually rots out into...
Eventually it rots out. But if you mix it in from there, it's going to do more damage than good. What you want is a soil amendment. Okay? That's the other thing they have there. So they have the compost amendment. It's kind of a blackish substance. Use that, mix it 50-50 with the soil. You should be perfect.
I noticed one group called mulch, the other group called it seems to be very...
It's completely different.
That's what I think,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
that's not for me. These guys are pushing friends, and they're calling one the same exact.
Yeah, they're not. Here's the difference though. You can use your compost as a mulch if you wanted to. If you wanted to. You cannot use your mulch as a compost or a soil amendment. That's the difference. So wood chips, that's for the top of the soil. What that does is it makes it aesthetically appealing, it keeps the weeds down, and it helps keep the moisture down. Okay? The amendment you mix with the soil so that you got a good soil medium to plant your plants. That's what I'm talking about in here. So if you were to have just plain dirt, and you go, Steve, I need a soil amendment to crop my dirt. First thing I'm going to do is give you this G&B Harvest Supreme. I'm going to tell you to mix that 50-50 in the soil. That's the hot setup. That's the Cadillac of planting your plants. Does that make sense? A little bit, or am I confusing you more? Mulch, top dress. Amendment, compost is to be mixed in the soil. That's the way you look at it. And you're dealing with the city people that are pretty good, but they're not quite as well versed as like your nursery folks here. That's why I say when you guys are shopping for products and nursery products, you come to a nursery like here. If you go to the Home Depot or Lowe's, one of those box stores, you better be sure you know what you're getting. You're not going to get as good of advice as you would from here. So getting the knowledge, going to those workshops, that's great, but be careful, okay? Mulch, top, amendment, compost, mix in. How many people compost? Okay. Constantly compost when it's ready. Throw it on the ground whenever you can. Let it work in. This is a mulch. This looks like a redwood compost. Am I right?
It's fir bark.
Fir bark. Okay. This is your mulch. Now this is very high end. This is good stuff. Not only is it going to look nice, but that's going to sit right on top of everything.
Chunkier pieces.
So let's get back Tomatoes.
These big pots, what about the containers where you have water in the bottom?
I don't like those. You know, I don't like anything that's going to hold moisture in. I want drainage. After I water, I want all that water to be gone. There's nothing worse than water sitting at the bottom of a pot. Those roots get down there, then you're going to get rot, and you're not going to do good. You got to remember, tomatoes don't like water. They don't. Okay? Let them dry out. I always tell people a tomato is a weed. The less you take care of it, the better off you are. But if you start it out this way, and then you pull back on your water, you let them dry out, you'll have a lot of success. So we layer this with compost, dry fertilizer, potting soil, dry fertilizer. We do about 3 or 4 layers up. You can do more if you want. And the reason you do that with your organic fertilizers, they take a little bit longer to break down. So your organics need a little more heat, but they also take longer. You're not going to get instant results from these dry organics. So if you have all these layers of organics in here, dry organics, as the root of the tomato starts going down, by the time it gets down there, those fertilizers are breaking down and they're going to be ready available for the plants.
That's what they're saying, don't try. It doesn't work right away.
It just takes a little longer. So if you're doing it here, it's going to break down and then the roots are going to be ready to go with them. I do everything. I do both. I do a liquid too. Once I get the plant planted, I go with the liquid fertilizer, and I do that every time I water. How often do I water, Pat?
About every 3 weeks.
Good, you remember.
Yeah.
So when you plant, okay, let's go backwards. Okay, we've got our soil. We do it the lasagna method. We also need a really sturdy, strong tomato cage. Be careful of those little tomato cages. If you're going to use them, you better stake them up. Because what will happen, that tomato will go, and how many people have ever had the tomato cage fall over? We all have, right? I use contractor's wire. Stuff they put in driveways, I make a big circle with it, and plant tomato. Okay? So we've got contractor's wire, 5, 8 feet. I grow them about 8 feet tall, my tomatoes. We got our lasagna, we got our soil ready, we want to plant.
So this says 25 gallons, so the 25 gallons.
I would go bigger than this. Just think about 2 feet, 2 feet by 2 feet. This is a good example. If you're going to go pots, I would even go bigger than this. You could get away with this, but just remember, you're not going to get as much product with the smaller the pot. So some people want to go smaller. Now with this guy, you could go with 1 tomato plant, but you're going to go with a determinate tomato. We're going to talk about that right now, and then we're going to plant. So there's 2 different kinds of tomatoes that I want you to understand. An indeterminate tomato, it grows up, needs a cage, needs support. You're going to get tomatoes for a longer period of time. Okay? There's a lot more varieties with an indeterminate tomato. A determinate tomato is a bush tomato. Okay? You don't need as big of a pot, you don't need support, but you're going to get most of your tomatoes at the same time. So right here I have the patio. This is one of my favorite determinate tomatoes. You put this guy in a 15-gallon can, you're in good shape. Okay? You put an indeterminate tomato, this is a better boy, you put that one in here, you'll get a tomato plant, you'll get tomatoes, but you're not going to get as much as in this one or a 2-foot box. Okay? Remember, those roots get big. That's why if you have a raised bed garden, people put like 10 tomato plants in it. How many people have ever done that? Put too many tomato plants in a bed. Yay! Yeah, what happens? You got a mess, right? Yeah. About 3 years ago, my uncle, he lives up here in Anaheim. During pandemic, I went over and I got all these raised beds made up for him and set them up and left him all these tomato plants. And I go, when you're done, give the rest to the neighbors. Well, he planted them all. Then we went to the Home Depot and bought a tank sprayer and Miracle-Gro.
Oh, no.
And it was, I went over there, it was a disaster. We got some tomatoes, but just a mess. In a 4x4 raised bed, you could go with 2 tomatoes and be fine. Okay? Probably 1. Just remember, they're going to get huge. 1 indeterminate plant. So, yes, sir.
I'll go with that. You look at
Yeah.
tomatoes.
That's what I'm here for.
And most people don't use 2x2 square foot for a tomato.
And it's like a candy store. You walk out, everybody, I'm watching all these people walk out with 20, 30 tomatoes, and they're going to have a farm. But they'll live and learn, right? So, and then which is the best? I'm going to give you some choices that I like, suggestions. But right now we've got our bed ready, right? We got our soil prepped. How are we going to prep our soil? Lasagna method. Okay. Yes.
Can you dig a hole in your in-ground bed and do the lasagna method?
Yeah. You could. It's a little harder.
Okay.
If you can, it's just a little. What I would suggest, if you have just plain dirt, what I would suggest is digging as deep as you can. Try to go down 2 feet so that you get a good root structure, and then turn over the soil and 50-50 with the Harvest Supreme. Go ahead and plant. Throw a bunch of dry organic all over the top, and you're good to go. Okay, that works really good too. This is the high-end method. Okay, and it can get expensive, but this is about as best you possibly could grow a tomato. All right, yes, sir.
You ever promote using gypsum and like worm casing for more nitrogen?
Sure.
Along with the
Why not?
fertilizer?
Won't hurt at all. Gypsum is calcium sulfate. Okay. Some people feel blossom end rot on a tomato is caused by calcium deficiency. I disagree. Okay, I feel it's a water imbalance. Either you're watering too much, not enough, or sometimes if you water like once a week and then you go to every day and then you go to every 3 weeks, that tomato kind of freaks out. You get that water imbalance, you get the blossom end rot. The Roma tomatoes are very susceptible to blossom end rot. My solution for that was just to pop off the first batch of tomatoes, and it's only cosmetics. You can cut off the ugliness. But if you add the calcium sulfate, you are adding calcium, doesn't hurt, but you're also adding sulfate, sulfur, that drops the pH a little bit. Our waters are very alkaline, and our soils are alkaline, so adding gypsum is good. The other thing gypsum is good is if you have a clay soil. It helps keep it from compacting. Worm castings, always. Just keep throwing them on there. Worm seed, keep using it. Great stuff. Which one? Okay, the biochar potting soil. She just asked a great question. Right now, that's my favorite potting soil. This is a pure 100%. All you do is just use that. So if you're going to grow like a determinate tomato, get a bag of this, put it in, throw a little bit of the G&B on top, plant your tomatoes. But the biochar is really cool because it has a charcoal that will help retain some of the nutrients and then let them dissipate and break down a little bit better. I like it. It kind of, it's almost like taking a sponge and holding the water in and letting that water go off, but it takes those nutrients and it kind of lets them fly off here and there. And it's a great product. Our tubs and our tomatoes, it's almost, I think it's about 60% this time. I decided to give this a shot because I had such good results. Great pie soil, yeah.
Will tomatoes climb wire on their own, or do you need to?
The indeterminate? You know, there's a couple ways to do it. I always just walk by the tomatoes and kind of push them in because they'll start going like this and out. So every once in a while I'll go in and do that. I don't prune tomatoes. Some people say, oh, you got to take the suckers off. No, it's a weed. The other thing, if you prune too much, you're exposing those tomatoes to sunburn. And you don't want to do that. So I don't prune the tomatoes, and I just try to push them back in and help them climb that way. I don't want to do a lot of work. I'm going to have 30 of these things, and it's a lot of work just to get in there and water every few weeks. The only time I prune is when I'm walking down the aisles of the tomatoes and like the branches there and they break off. So again, don't put a lot of thought in it. Okay? Don't put a lot of effort into your tomatoes. It's a weed, right, Pat?
You bet.
Okay. You want to plant tomatoes?
You can't kill
We got our grant. What?
You can't kill them.
Well, you can. How many people have planted a tomato and they got this beautiful green bush and no tomatoes? Everybody's done it. You know what you did wrong?
Too much
Water
nitrogen.
too much.
Oh.
That's it. So are we looking for a beautiful green plant or do we want tomatoes? We want tomatoes. A good example, I had somebody come to one of my lectures with a few tomato branches. And they were awful. They were green, red, I mean they were just all blotchy. And I asked him, I go, well, what's wrong, Steve? And I go, are you getting tomatoes? Because I've never had so many tomatoes. So then what do you care, right? Who cares what the plant looks like? We want tomatoes. Less water, a lot of neglect, and you're going to get a good product. Yes?
The question is, will you live you water every 3 weeks? How does a person like us know when it's time to water? Does it get wilty?
Okay, that's a great question. Can we hold on to that for a minute?
Later?
We're going to plant first.
Okay.
Then I'm going to explain watering and how to know.
Okay,
All right,
how to
so
know.
we've got our soil prepped. Do we have any questions before we plant?
I kind of do. I'm going to plant in a pot on the concrete by a swimming pool. There's a lot of heat going on. And you said that that potting soil has charcoal. When I put the charcoal bits down on the bottom, no, see? I would have done that.
If you're using, let's say you have a barbecue or a fireplace and you have all that charcoal in there, be careful about putting too much in your garden. What I recommend is taking that and putting it in your compost. Let it compost.
I want to talk about the charcoal you buy in potted plants that don't have triggers.
You could do that, yeah.
That's okay, but the big charcoal.
It's going to cost you a fortune.
Well, I didn't know. I was just
Why do you
asking.
want to spend money?
I don't want to do it. I'm not going to see you.
Did you bring her?
No, never saw her in my life.
Are you coming to Lopez in 2 weeks? Probably. My last workshop.
No, she's going. She's
Okay.
going.
Better. Bring me lunch. Anyhow, where were we? See what happens?
So we're potting.
Soil. Planting. We're planting the plants right now, right? We got bare soil. We're going to plant our plants. All right.
Determinate.
We're going to go with an indeterminate. Mr. Stripey. This is a good tomato. It is an indeterminate heirloom. How do I know? Because it says it. And you know what my worst nightmare is at school? We grow hundreds of tomatoes. We've grown over 600 varieties and planted them at school. My worst nightmare is if a student takes all the labels. One year they took all the pepper labels out. So from now on, I take pictures of what we plant and I document it. That way it's foolproof. But anyhow, this is a Mr. Stripey. Yes, sir.
Determinate and indeterminate heirloom and
Hybrid.
hybrid.
Well, that's what I was just going to talk about. Boy, you just read my mind. We talked about determinate and indeterminate. Let's just ask a question. What's a determinate tomato?
It's one that will grow to a specific size, set all of its fruit, and then
Excuse me.
Well, here, no support. Here, listen.
Here.
What?
I couldn't hear her.
I was just asking her what a determinate tomato was. You know, she said the right answer.
What is it?
Oh, okay. Determinate tomato is a bush tomato. Doesn't need any support. You get most of your tomatoes at the same time. Indeterminate tomato needs support. You're going to get a longer growing period, longer production, and also a lot more varieties. Okay. Now, heirloom and hybrid. A hybrid tomato is a cross between 2 or 3 different tomatoes. All right? The hybrids are always going to give you more tomatoes, right? And they're more disease resistant also. So if you want more production, try to stick with your hybrids. Your heirlooms is a plant that's grown plant to seed for 7+ years. How many varieties of tomatoes do you think there are?
Thousands.
More than that. Over 20,000. So when I say I've grown 600 varieties, it's not very much when I say there's 20,000. Most of them are the heirlooms because they keep growing them over and over and they get these weird varieties. So Mr. Stripey is an heirloom tomato. The heirloom's not going to get as many tomatoes as a hybrid But you have all those fun varieties where you're going to get the different colors, the different flavors, the different sizes. So it's often fun to do. We do probably 10 hybrids, and we do about 20 of the heirlooms. And we change them up every year. I'll go with my top 10 every single year. And I'll explain to you or give you some suggestions before you go shopping. But we want to plant this guy. What I like to do, I want to take off these lower leaves. It should say on the back. This is an indeterminate. I can't read it. It doesn't say on the back? No. Well, you need to ask Mr. List. It might be. No, look. It might be from it. I can't read that. It says non-GMO. Does that matter? Yeah, it's an indeterminate. I can pretty much all of these will tell you that. Or heirloom or cherry carrot. Okay, here's one. Oh, most of them do. Okay, vine type, indeterminate on the Mr. Stripe. So most of them say, but the early girl absolutely is an indeterminate. One of my favorites, by the way. Okay, so you see what I've done? I've taken off all these leaves. And this is the exception to the rule. Most all your plants, when you're doing any landscaping and planting, you always got to make sure that you plant at the soil level. Whatever the plant is, plant at the soil level. Tomatoes are different. You can plant this all the way to the top. Roots will shoot out here. You could plant it like this. You could plant it on its side. Roots will shoot down here. You'll get a stronger tomato. I always just like to put it in the ground as far as I can. I'm done with it. Take off all these lower leaves, plant it really deep. If you want, you can add a little bit of vitamin B1. Tomatoes are very resilient. They really don't need it, but it will give them a kick. Plant your tomato, keep it damp for about 7 to 10 days. And then you're going to pull way back on your water. I wouldn't water for another 3 weeks. Now we're on your terms, right?
I forgot my question.
I did it because it was very good. Then you want to know, well, how do you know when to water? A couple ways to do it. If the plant starts wilting in the afternoon, be very careful. Tomato plants will trick you. They will wilt and they'll say, I need water. But if you wait till morning and it's still wilted, go ahead and water. But in the afternoon, they're playing games with you, so be very careful. The other thing is a moisture meter. When you have a moisture meter, you got to make sure you dig down a little bit, then stick the moisture meter. In the beginning, those roots aren't very big, so you're just sticking the moisture meter in. All right? As they grow, those roots are going down 2 feet, so you're going to need to dig down and then stick your moisture meter. So you want them to stress. I can't tell you anything more important on a tomato plant than letting them stress, letting them dry out. You're going to get an ugly looking plant, but you're going to get a ton of tomatoes. Does that work?
Yes, it was a great answer.
I have a moisture meter in my desk for you. It's a little frog.
I have to have
Yes.
Do you recommend the chopstick method? We're checking my moisture. Like stick the chopstick down if it comes up dry.
Kind of like
and
when
clean.
you're cooking brownies?
Yeah.
I guess. She asked about the chopstick method, and the only thing I could pair that up is brownies. If you know if your brownies, you need to take a toothpick, pull it out. So, in other words, with the chopstick, you're sticking it down. If you come up and you got soil on it,
You don't water.
right.
And then if it comes up clean
problem
water.
with that, how big are chopsticks? About 6-8 inches, right?
Mm-hmm.
No, they can be longer.
They could be longer? Okay, well, you got to remember, going down there. And it's very important as these plants get bigger that they dry out. And those roots are 2 feet down. You really got to dig down there and get them. So I just let them go as long as I can. And if they're starting to wilt in the morning, I'll check it, I'll look at it, I'll stick my hand in there. But it's so important that you let these dry out completely. Yes?
Even though you get temperatures like 110,
We're not ready then. As they get it, I'm going to tell you what we're going to do. So this is the first 60 days, okay? And it's going to start warming up. The plant's going to start growing bigger. And also, those roots are going to develop, and you're going to have less soil. So as it gets hotter, you may have to water more, all right? just to let you know, when it hits 100 degrees, a tomato plant will stop growing. When it hits 110 degrees, they can die. So that's why I'm telling you, get your tomatoes in now. You're going to be harvesting at the end of June, into July, into August. The last 3 years, have we had hot Julys? No. We've had very mild Julys. The last 3 years, we've had some incredible tomato seasons. Going into August, I think last year was about the middle of August, we started to get to 110 degrees. So your tomatoes not doing good, starting to stress, and then you get spider mites. Very difficult to get rid of the
I
spider.
have a very important question. We have people who are going to do it in pots, we're going to do it in beds. Should they be in full sun?
Full sun, 100%. Whenever you're growing a vegetable or a fruit tree, think about what they're doing on farms. It's always full sun, right? Now, if you don't have full sun, let's say you only have morning sun, you're not going to do very good. But if you have only afternoon sun, you could still do pretty darn good. But all-day sun is very, very important. Yes?
This goes back a little bit, but can a hybrid tomato be grown indeterminate, or
That's a good question. Can a hybrid tomato be indeterminate or determinate? So they be two different varieties. So the patio, that's a determinate tomato, that's a hybrid. Okay? The early girl is a hybrid, but it's an indeterminate. See what I'm saying? So you're not going to get very many tomato varieties that are determinate. All right? There's just not. Most of your tomato varieties are going to be indeterminate, which needs the support that we're getting. I caught you right when you're eating.
You did.
We'll come back to you. Yes?
If it's 110 degrees, as you mentioned, if you put a shade cloth over your tomato bed, would that make a difference?
Okay, you got it. It can, but be careful with that. Because oftentimes you cover something and it creates an oven. So it could, what we try to do, if it really gets hot, we'll move our pots and we'll put them like closer to trees so we can develop our own microclimate. You could put a fan out there to circulate the air. So covering them like that, yes and no. I don't like to do that just because you cover that and it could get even hotter underneath the shade cloth. So really, hopefully, we don't get a huge heat wave June, July. We can continue our tomatoes. Where most folks here are in Orange County, right? You're closer to the beach. You're not going to get that killer hot weather, are you?
No, we won't.
We get pockets.
Pockets
sometimes
is fine.
where the wind's different.
I always compare things to the San Fernando Valley, and we get hot. And when it hits hot, when I start getting spider mites, I am done. Okay? There's really no organic control for spider mites, and once I get them, I'm done with tomatoes. My tomato season is over. Some tomatoes are less susceptible to spider mites. A healthy, strong plant is more or less susceptible to getting the spider mites and other diseases and insects. Yes?
What about those big fat tomatoes?
That was next on my list. Guys, you guys are all reading my mind. All right. When you have problems on the tomatoes or any vegetables, there's a few ways that I like to tell you how to take care of it. Number one, you want to mechanically take them off if you can. Okay? Wash them off with a hose. That's solution number one.
What are we taking off?
Bugs. Okay?
I thought we were taking tomatoes off.
When they're ready. Number two, you want to get like a dish soap, preferably organic dish soap, right, Toby?
Yep.
One time I recommended palm olive, and I've never heard the end of it. The lady went to the manager, to Toby, to Ty. He's recommending a carcinogenic organic dishwashing soap, a tablespoon to a quart of water. Spray that on your bugs. Okay? Sometimes you get insects on the underside of the leaf, so you have to get up there and do that. You need to repeat this every 3 to 5 days. Most of your insects, their gestation period is 3 to 5 days. So repeating it. This is only a contact insecticide. Okay, number 3, we're going into organic insecticides. Spinosad, neem oil. And for you, BT, which is Bacillus thuringiensis. It's a bacteria, harmless to humans, and it will kill the Lepidoptera larva, which is the tomato hornworm. So as they feed, it will kill it. The great thing about BT, it won't harm your beneficial insects. It won't harm your bees, your ladybird beetles, your praying mantids, lacewings. Whereas everything else, you can still kill your beneficial insects. So ideally, you don't want to spray at all if you don't have to. Tolerance. Yes, ma'am.
I have 4 Boy Scouts, and we use simple green because it's organic. It's the best.
That's an oil.
No,
Or cleaner, isn't it?
It's
soap. Okay.
But they use it because they wash their dishes in the
Okay.
rivers.
Simple green. There's a new one.
Simple green. It's real good.
I don't spray.
Yeah.
Tolerance. I get strong plants, and I just depend on the biological balance of the insects and your garden. If you start spraying, especially if you go into a synthetic insecticide, you will disrupt the biological balance, and you'll have to spray all the time. Okay? Even if a pesticide says it won't hurt good bugs like bees and ladybugs, I'm very hesitant. Soapy water will kill a bee. Be very careful of what you spray and how much you spray. We've all eaten bugs, right? We've all gone to a restaurant? No? Cockroach leg here and there? So it's okay to eat a bug here and there. Tolerance. All right. Yes, sir.
The last speaker mentioned companion plants, which will help you with the worm. Do you subscribe to that?
Okay. Companion planting, I'm all for it. It will help. It's not foolproof, but the problem you're going to have, though, is if you start doing companion planting in tomatoes, those plants require a lot more water than a tomato plant. So if you're doing companion planting, get some separate pots and put around it. So I like companion planting to encourage bees. I would suggest if you want more bees in your garden, African blue basil is one of my favorites. That one attracts a lot of bees. Lavender, rosemary, all your herbs. Plant an herb garden. You could have a tomato plant here, and all your companion plants could be way over there. Bees are still going to come. They'll go a mile away. But as far as marigolds and geraniums and mint, and that keeping your bugs off, a little bit. It's more of a novelty, in my opinion. But it's still kind of fun to do.
Thank you.
Yes?
Is there such a thing as male and a female tomato plant where you got some mate, you got plant fibers in order to get them?
No, and tomato plants are interesting. They really don't, they pretty much pollinate themselves. Okay? So you're not going to require, or you really need a lot of bees to be around. The bees help. They will help it. But they tend to pollinate themselves, male and female on the same plant. So you don't need two. Like, let's say a plum. Let's say a Satsuma plum. I'm just throwing things out there. A Satsuma plum needs a Santa Rosa plum in order to get the fruit. Some of your cherries. So as far as your question, do they need a pollinator plant? Plant it, you're good. You can plant one plant, you're going to get tomatoes on it. Your turn.
Yes, I have a list. Sure. So my tomato plant this winter, we ended up spraying it with organic insecticide, but I noticed how we had put up a few sprays, and then also I was tempted to cut it off because it got the disease, like this patch disease, but I left it because it had some flower. It was still growing flowers and giving fruit, but it was taking longer
To fruit? Was this during the winter when it was colder?
right now during
I'm not a big fan of overwintering my tomatoes or my peppers, and I'm not a big fan of late season tomatoes, which some people call winter tomatoes. You plant them in September. I just end up pulling the
instead of
plant.
pull those and start the new ones.
Don't you want to grow spinach and lettuce and cauliflower and broccoli and all that? So you get rid of your tomatoes, and then in October you're going to be planting all your winter vegetables. So now we're in a position right now where we're harvesting our winter vegetables, and we want to think about, well, our summer vegetables, right? Yeah. So you're thinking about harvesting and changing everything. I have the luxury, I have a lot of land. So we keep all our tomatoes in containers. I have spinach, lettuce, cauliflower, broccoli, cilantro, and a couple others, kale, and they're all in our beds. And I'll keep harvesting them through April. May 1st, what am I going to plant? Peppers. Why am I waiting so long?
Hot.
Need that soil temperature. You've got to get that soil temperature up. You can buy your peppers, you can plant them now, but you'll find for the next month, they're not going to grow very much. They just kind of sit there. As soon as it gets hot, wham, they start growing. Also, just to let you know, peppers like a lot more water, so it's not a good drought-tolerant plant, and they love a lot of fertilizer. Last year we had the best pepper crop ever. I can't wait for this year. Did anybody see me eat the Carolina Reaper? Check out my she did. My students made me eat a Carolina Reaper. It was hot. It was hot. And then afterwards you calm down and you get this euphoria. Did you know that? Yeah, I didn't realize that. I'm not going to eat peppers again. No way. So, okay, now we're still working on our tomatoes. They're growing up. You're not watering. When you do water, though, I do like using liquid organics. Okay, I don't water very much, but every time I water, I mix. This is a great product. It's from kelp. There are other products, but what are we looking for on the label? OMRI? Or you could just be sure with Kellogg's and G&B, they're going to be 100% organic. I will not only soak the roots when I water, I will water the foliage. It's called foliar feeding. So that too is really good.
Yeah, I don't know. I noticed that there's a bunch of different efficiency weed fertilizers inside, for example, and they'll have different numbers of like phosphorus and potassium and whatever.
Okay,
the last
what
one
we're
is.
going to do, I'm going to tell you how to deal with that. Your numbers on here, always with organic fertilizers, are going to be very low. Okay, the great thing about organics, it's really hard to burn your plants. You have 3 numbers on here. Number 1 is nitrogen. Nitrogen makes things green, makes things grow. So we're going to use the word up. All right, phosphorus helps with the root system and the stalk. So we'll utilize the word down. And then potassium just strengthens the whole plant. So nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, up, down, all around. Very, very simple. So try to get a number that's consistent. That's called a balanced fertilizer. This one here, 463, pretty balanced. So you have 4% nitrogen, makes things grow. You have 6% phosphorus, which gives you a good strong root system, and you have 3% potassium. And then also, if you look on here, you got some trace elements and all types of bacillus and all these other microns, croutons. There's all types of stuff. We're not going to get into details. A balanced fertilizer is always good. If you want, when we're done, we can go look in there and kind of analyze it. Anybody wants me to walk around the nursery and talk about tomato plants and give you more suggestions, I will. Yes? I forgot what I was talking about, so we're on the same page.
And mulch, do they have acid nitrate?
No, very, very little. Some of your soil amendments has a little bit in there, but you're not using your soil amendments to fertilize, okay? Your mulch, remember mulch is just a top dress, okay? The soil amendment in your compost is to mix into the soil to get a good soil medium so your plants have something for the roots to grow in. There's very, very little nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. That's why you need to get things like this. Very important.
Well, that doesn't go counter to organic.
Which? Well, this is organic. This is 100% organic.
Well, nitrate, well, that stuff is chemical.
No, not this kind. If you read the labels, sometimes a fertilizer company, and I won't name names, will say they're organic. It doesn't have that OMRI. What they do, they throw in a tiny bit of nitrates, ammonium nitrate, ureas, And what that'll do is it'll make it look like their product is working better. But if it says OMRI, it's 100% organic.
Where does it
You derive, let's say your nitrogen's derived from like blood meal.
I get chicken manure and you can get chicken manure.
Yeah, Toby knows. Your phosphorus derived from bone. There's all these different ways. That's why your numbers are always going to be very low on an organic fertilizer. But there's no chemicals whatsoever in this.
So if those companies add non-organic components to make their product work better, it means that non-organic...
They're deceiving you.
So non-organic works better?
So what? Yeah.
Ah, okay.
Well, wait. No. You're going to get quicker results, and you're going to see the results. Doesn't mean it works better. And we're all trying to go non-chemical, right? We don't want to. Why? You know what? We can get into that, and I kind of agree with you, because I could grow the greatest tomato in the world with urea, which is a pure nitrogen, or with the organic. But I try to lecture on not using any chemicals whatsoever. People want that organic.
Just as a personal preference.
It's more of a public preference than anything. We're all trying to make ourselves a little more healthy, right? So if we're taking and eating chemicals here and there, eventually it's not going to be good for us. If we could do 100% organic on it, it's going to be better for you in the long run. So when you get to be how old do you think I am? 45. And 20 years to that. Okay? I eat healthy most of the time. I'll probably go get an In-N-Out burger on the way. But you also got to be careful about mixing the two. If you're going organic, go 100% organic all the time. If you go in there, let's say you're going organic and you decide to put some Miracle-Gro on your soil, that can hurt the mycorrhizans and the bacteria that are in the soil, and it won't make your organics work enough. So one or the other. Don't mix them up. Yes, sir.
If you go to Home Depot or one of the other, you can buy a cubic foot of cow manure and chicken for about $2. And it's supposed to be weed-free and natural. And especially the cow manure, I've read that it's great to seed a compost pile or a mulch pile because it generates heat.
Well, all your compost is going to generate heat. That's the decomposing purpose or property of a compost. Be very careful about manures. Manures are very high in salts. Most of your steer manure, and there is one exception, right, Toby? Most of your steer manures, your chicken manures are very high in salinity. Unless it's been leached out, you have to be careful. And they only add more of an organic base to it. You're not going to get much fertilizer properties out of either one. Now, if they're mixed into a product, like I believe the Harvest has some chicken in it, doesn't it? It's great, but that chicken manure has been laid out and composted and leached. And by leaching, meaning you water it, you let the waters run out, it's taking out all the salts. So be very careful about buying what you're buying, especially if it's super cheap. You don't know what you're getting. Adding it to compost, great. It's only going to help.
Can I jump us back to watering?
Absolutely.
Okay. But you said the first 60 days you kind of want to let the plants suffer for a little bit first.
You want to let your plants suffer all the time,
Okay,
if
so
you can.
what
Let
is-
them stress.
What does the suffering look like in the second half of their growing life? Like after the first 60 days, how are you?
You're still
watering?
doing the same thing. You're just not watering if you don't have to. Okay? You're going as long as you possibly can go without watering. The less you water, the more stress, the more tomatoes you're going to get.
Why is that?
Okay?
The more you stress the
The more you stress the tomato, the better you're going to get fruit. The roots are going to go down deeper. It's going to push out more fruit. So did you grow a beautiful tomato plant last year and you didn't get any tomatoes, right? We all do. You don't want a beautiful green plant. You know? Yeah, that's because you water too much.
But is it just tomatoes? The other stuff is
Others are different. We're really talking about tomatoes, as I said, with peppers. Peppers like a little bit more water. But you know, if we want to go into like zucchinis and your cucurbits and melons and things, they can dry out quite a bit too. They're more drought tolerant. But if we're just kind of, this is more of a tomato mania speak, right? And we just want to let them dry out. There's 10 videos on my YouTube channel that tell you how to do it from beginning with the soil, picking out the tomato, all the way to harvesting. So that kind of tells you. I am working on 2023 videos. I've already put up 2. My next one will be planting. And that'll be at the end of the week, so we'll be planting them. So follow me on my social media. It'll give you some more hints. Also, one thing I really, really stress with gardening is get a diary. Write down everything you do in the garden, whether it be if it's a positive or a negative, because you're not going to remember next year what you did.
Or 5 minutes.
Or 5, yeah, like me, 5 minutes. So, write down what you did. Then next year when you're planting, you can go, oh, I planted all these varieties and they did good. Or that variety sucks. I'm not doing that one again. So it's always good. Get yourself a garden diary, and that will help you a lot. Yes.
When you buy dirt, I buy dirt, fill up my raised beds sometimes. Help when I throw in kitchen compost, I throw dirt on top of it, so most of it in there. But I buy anything that has an additive.
Has a what? Okay.
It looks great. It's black. Not super cheap. It's about $5 or $6 a bag for a cubic foot. And it seems to work well.
Hey, you guys, if it works and you're getting success, stick with the system. I'm here to help you if you've never done it before, or if you're not having good results. I'm here to kind of coach you to get better results. If you got a product that's working and you're getting results, stick with it.
So if you're using, it's a law now, Sylmar County, so you're supposed to be saving all this stuff from cleaning vegetables and whatever. And then you, at least what I do, is I throw it in my compost pile and cover it up.
That's great. Yeah, that's the way to do it. And then you're going to do that for 6-8 weeks, and you're going to open it up, and you're going to have about that much compost, right? I know it's disappointing, but you just got to continue doing it. And the rule of thumb is take your hand in there and smell it. If it smells like caca, it's not ready. If it's super hot, it's not ready. Okay? So those are the 2 things you got to constantly do. And what they're trying to do is your food waste. In LA, they're giving you these little containers. And you put all your food waste in there, and then you either put it in your compost, which I'd recommend, that's number 1, or you put it in the green waste can. Okay? They don't want you putting any of your food material in the black ones. Okay? They want to try to recycle everything they possibly can.
What's that leave for the black one? James?
Yeah, pretty much. What do you do with it? Why have the black one anymore? You're right. What's the brown one for?
Green, recycling, yard waste.
So you got green is for all your organic matter. Black is for everything else. Blue is for recycling plastic, and brown is for your horse manure. But you can throw your horse manure in your compost pile, right? Am I confusing you?
That's right, because Orange County is different.
I know. I'm talking LA, but I'm sure it's pretty close to being similar, right? Pretty close, maybe. Okay.
Thank you.
Green is really?
Brown is for the clippings and the food and that.
Huh. Okay. All right, then I better not tell you. LA sanitation. Yeah?
Yeah, because Anaheim Hills doesn't have blue. They have green tan, but tan's for your regular waste. And then
Let's not
black.
go there. Let's stick with composting and beautiful tomatoes. All right, we have questions. Yes.
I didn't do so well with my tomatillo last year. Is that one like? Is there a secret to that one? 'Cause
I love growing
like,
tomatillos, and I had the best ones last year. But the key is, if it's going to get really hot, they're going to be the first ones that start to fail.
Okay.
Yeah, that heat will get a tomatillo really quick. Get them in now.
Okay.
Treat it. It's in the Solana family, or the tomatoes. It's almost like a tomato. So just treat it the same way. Yes.
If you're trying to preserve heirloom varieties, do you recommend cross-pollinating?
Just save the seeds. When you're saving seeds with tomatoes, your heirlooms are easy. Not a problem. You just take the tomato and you just dry the seeds. You're ready for next year. If you're trying to save a hybrid seed, you have about a 30% chance that hybrid will be the same tomato. So be very careful about trying to save hybrid tomato seeds. Heirlooms, not a problem. You're going to cross-pollinate, you can create a new heirloom tomato. So that's how they have 20,000 different varieties of tomatoes. But just be careful if you're seed saving, let's say an early girl tomato. You're probably not going to get that exact tomato again. You have a 30% chance. These are some good tomatoes.
That doesn't make sense.
Why not?
Well, what's the other 70% of the tomato going to come from if it's not from the seed? Is it only 30%?
Well, you're going to get a 30% chance you're going to get that early girl again.
But what are you going to get instead? Nothing?
A bizarre tomato.
How can that be?
It's back to luck.
Genetics.
Ask Steve Godo. He taught me that.
I remember that.
Yeah? Yes.
I don't know if this is ahead of your presentation, the squirrels and rats.
Yeah, you asked that one before.
Yeah.
22?
I'm still obsessed with it.
Yeah, I know.
That's
That's a
illegal
hard
in my
one.
neighborhood.
That's the first thing I threw out. Okay. Squirrels, rats, the only real way you're ever going to control them if you have a bad problem is put cages on your beds. Okay? And using a hardware cloth. Remember with rats, a big rat can go through a hole the size of a quarter. They'll restrict their bodies. Squirrels, out of control. I have a great way of taking care of squirrels at our school. They like the cafeteria food more than they like my vegetables. So I'm lucky. But the only real way is to do this. We've trapped the squirrels and taken them to the parks. Okay? So we've done that before. Cats, we have a lot of feral cats, so that's been keeping down our rat population. But the only real way for you, if you really want to do it, is build some cages and just try to use hardware cloth, not chicken wire. Something that's a little smaller.
What's it called?
Hardware cloth. That's the square. That's the square metal. Yeah, they have everything here. Do we have any more questions? What? You can. You could do that too, but then we're getting into a whole different thing. What if you have animals?
Birds that feed
Birds,
on it
yeah.
and poison them.
So it's kind of, yeah. I mean, that's going to be up to you, what you want to do. Yes, you can. There's really no squirrel bait that's a poison. It would be more towards rats. But, yes.
Do squirrels like tomatoes and do rats like tomatoes? They'll both go for them?
They'll both go for them, and they'll generally wait until they're ripe.
Yeah.
You know, before we
Birds, same thing.
before we did.
And mice. Mice are a problem in your garden too, especially when the plants are small. When they're small, they're tender and succulent, and the mice love them. So somebody was talking about that a couple weeks ago at one of my lectures, and they said, I don't know what's attacking it. First thing I'm thinking is snails. And then we're talking about he goes out in the morning and his plants are gone. And it's mice. Rabbits too. Rabbits are another one. So if you, let's say, get these cages, and you got a little mice about meese, how do you say mice? Mouse. You got a little mouse, you really got to have some small holes, okay? So it's a difficult situation with the mallards. Now I have at school, we have skunks, okay? Skunks dig, they dig holes. Possums dig, raccoons dig, they're all going for bugs, you know, and then we've got squirrels. rats, mice.
What are grubs?
What are grubs?
Yeah, 'cause I understand they attack plants too. Grubs.
They can if it's a certain kind of grub, and you do need a lot of them.
They're those ugly things,
The
right?
bigger ones aren't that big of a deal. They're feeding on decomposing. A bunch of them, they will do damage. But if you have a few, take them out, throw them to the chickens. Yes?
So you want to build a cage around the tomato plant to protect it from squirrels. You have to make it 2 by 2.
I use sprinkler pipe.
Sprinkler pipe.
And zip
I
ties.
see that. Zip ties, that's great. But you remember these tomato plants are going to get high. So what's going to happen if these cages aren't too big, if they're not big enough, that tomato plant is just going to be restricted in there. So you do need to make them big. Or, here's where pruning would come in handy. You may have to top the plant.
Is that bad?
They can get big. If you're growing a tomato plant properly, an indeterminate plant can go 6 to 8 feet without a problem.
It's not a
It is not a problem. But if you have a cage over your raised bed and that cage is only 4 feet, that's a problem, right? So.
Also grow a lot of tomato plants so you get some.
Yeah, you know what? A friend of mine that speaks with me, he always says, you grow one for yourself and one for the squirrels and another one for the bugs. So everybody's happy, right?
It's called the rabbit garden.
Yeah.
You have one big garden for you, and over here you got the little small one for the rabbit.
There you
leave
go.
yours alone.
There you go. But they always go to yours, though, don't they? They don't listen to us. All right, well, that's about it for me, unless you have more questions.
Your cards?
Yes.
Thank you.
There is, I got